everyone. I think we're live.
Hello and welcome. Yeah, glad to be back to Global Azure, and I'm thrilled to present today together with Jürgen. Our session is titled 7 Tips and Hidden Features to Boost Your Productivity with GitHub, and we have prepared a bunch of content and demos for you in the following 50 minutes. Yeah, to give a short intro, my name is Gerwald Oberleitner. I work within Microsoft in the technical sales team for Azure, focusing on technologies which we position towards software developers, which is DevOps with GitHub, containerization, API management, serverless. So that's my area of expertise. Jürgen.
Yeah, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining this session. My name is Jürgen Etzlstorfer. You will find all the links and like a little bit more of information on the link over there. I have a little bit of an echo, so if anyone else is this also hearing, please give me just a maybe you can send it in the comments or in the chat. And my responsibility within Microsoft is that I'm the developer engagement lead for Azure or for Azure technology. So if you have any questions around Azure or also GitHub, feel free to reach out. Again, you will find all the options to reach out in this link, and you will also find the Twitter handle here next to my name. And yeah, really thrilled to go into these 7 tips and hidden features. It might be even more. So let's kick it off.
Perfect. Yeah, let's give some base introduction into the system we are going to present today. Just a short slide covering what GitHub is. Sorry, system was unresponsive for a minute here. So GitHub is the largest developer platform on earth, serving now over 83 million developers in a large number of organizations, either enterprises or GitHub for sure, also from the open source world. The mission of GitHub is to focus on developer experience and developer efficiency and enable them to do their best work. And that's exactly what our session is also targeted about today. So for the first couple of for the first features, we thought about not going through slides. So if you have the handouts after our session, there is some more details also in written text within the slides. For now, we thought switching to a demo and demonstrating that right away is the better approach to give you an overview about GitHub.dev and GitHub Codespaces. So when we are in a GitHub repository like here, I'm sure you are familiar of the editing experience with the standard editor which we have in GitHub. And if you press at any position where you can do editing within GitHub, the dot key on your keyboard, then a so-called web editor is launched. We use for that the technology of Visual Studio Code, and you get a more or richer editor experience, but be aware that this kind of editor is running in a web browser. Yeah, so there is some functionality which is not available or disabled, like for example running the code or doing debugging in that with that application. You can also simply switch forth and back between the developer experience, but just changing the domain ending in your URL from github.com, which is the standard experience, to github.dev, as you have seen before, and then you get immediately to the web editor. But that's only one thing I want to show here in that section. Let's move back to our repository and talk a little bit about how you nowadays set up a developer PC. So what is the experience in setting up a developer PC with the much richer functionality? And for that, you are going to use GitHub Codespaces. So GitHub Codespaces is a virtualized developer environment, fully customizable, and giving you the option to run on different types of hardware. The configuration for GitHub Codespaces is done within your GitHub repository. So if you move to the .dev container folder we have here, then you see something new here, or what has been recently added. You now have a folder structure in the dev containers, giving you the opportunity to store multiple configurations for GitHub Codespaces in a single repository. And I used it here in a way to say, I want to address different roles in my project. So I have a developer, a data scientist. You might also have somebody focusing on documentation or doing some translation work in the UI. And with that, you can prepare an environment which totally fits that role and is specific to the needs and the requirements of the role of that person. But let's look more into the developer role, which I created here. So for starting or using GitHub Codespaces, you need a Docker file and a configuration file for your developer container. So that already tells you that this technology is based on a Docker image. And you have here the first possibility to configure your GitHub Codespace by choosing the image your dev container is based on. And GitHub provides a couple of pre-defined images which serve specific needs. And I have chosen here a container focusing on JavaScript and Node development. And during the build time, that's downloaded from the Microsoft Container Registry. But you can build your container totally on your own and bring in your own configuration experience here. The second thing we have here is the dev container configuration itself, so which takes care about how the container looks like. So that's about extensions you might have in Visual Studio Code running in the container. You can configure port forwards, run post-create commands like additional installation scripts, or also enable and disable features. And enabling and disabling features is a very cool feature as well, because in that area, we try to pre-package very popular tools and extensions, like, for example, a CLI, and you don't have to figure out where are the install labels, how do I run the install script, so that's pre-defined and pre-configured for you, and you can enable and disable those. As these configuration files also sit within your Git repository, of course, you have the full functionality like versioning, controlling any changes you do through pull requests. So it's a code element within your repository where all these mechanisms apply to. But with that, let's try to get access to one of the dev containers. So for that, we go to our code menu here, which we are very familiar with in GitHub, where we see an additional tab which is called Codespaces. We also have the opportunity here to manage all our Codespaces within our account, to see what kind of Codespaces we have, what the underlying hardware configuration is. We can also change that, delete the container if not needed anymore. Let's start the container I've already prepared here and bring that up in the browser. So the container will start super fast. Yeah. So if the image already has been created once, launching the container is something that is happening super quick. We are here in our editing experience, so our code repository is already checked out to that environment, so we can immediately start coding. But in that code space, we also have advanced functionality like the possibility to run and debug our application. And that's something we are going to do here right away. So let's launch the application. What's now being done is we create a port forward and can now connect to that port forward to see the output of the application, which is in that file a simple Hello World example saying Hello World Global Azure 2020 developers. For that port that's going to be published here, we have full control. So that port is currently set to a private mode, which means we are authenticating with our GitHub credentials. But we can also set that port visibility, for example, to public, so that other developers can have access to that application. Now, as it's being public, even you could access that, that application. If you are using, in addition to that kind of functionality and extension, as for example, live share in Visual Studio, which is a co-editing of code, so more some kind of screen sharing, or as you would also work together on an Office document. So without committing code, your pair programmer will see what changes you have done in the editor, has access to the debug information, see the variables, the call stack, breakpoints. So with live share, you could also enhance that functionality by working together. So by closing, let's have a quick look to the terminal. So there is also a terminal available in that environment, and we can see here that we are running in the context of the container with a user which is logged in here as Node, and we have all the features we have previously installed, for example, like kubectl, or we have the GitHub CLI available within that container. But working with the code space in the browser is not the only option we have. So we can also start our container in a local Visual Studio Code environment. And that's the last thing I want to demonstrate here. So we go to our code spaces. It's the quickest way now, and say here, launch in Visual Studio Code. And then we will bring up my local installation of Visual Studio Code here, and connecting to that remote container. Even if we are working in the UI of Visual Studio Code, we are working in that remote container, and also our debugging and running the application, everything which I've showed before, is running with in that container. Also our terminal, if I go back here to say who am I, if I don't misspell it, who am I, shows that we are running in that container. So let's summarize up Codespaces. So Codespaces is a super modern way of providing a developer PC, enabling new scenarios like onboarding new developers to a project or to a company super quick because you have a pre-prepared environment available for them. You can also experiment, try out new things, as you can always revert back to your starting point without ruining your developer environment. And you could also have different development environments for different project needs. For example, if you need to maintain also older applications, have conflicting dependencies in your projects, you can separate your developer environments by using that option. And with that, I will switch back to the slides and hand over to Jürgen.
Thank you. So the next thing that we want to talk about is GitHub Actions. And if you listen to the keynote in the morning, then you might already have heard of this. And yeah, I will see the slides just in a second. So they're coming up here. And for GitHub Actions, we can think about this is kind of a workflow system in GitHub that can be used for CI/CD, but also for more. So it's really these workflow systems where you have a way in you basically define it in YAML. It's part of the repository and it's executed by GitHub. So you don't have to bring your own hardware. It's run by GitHub. It has a very generous a free tier. So for public repositories and also self-hosted runners. So if you want to run it on your own instances, that it's completely free. And for private repositories, it also has like a free tier where you can execute and it's counted by the number of minutes you're running this. So I still like to compare it to CI/CD because it's one of the most used options or most used scenarios. And the power of those actions is that you can use a lot of other actions within your action. So you can make use of some other action, some other maybe smaller action that someone else already provided, and you can make use of this maybe for linting the code, maybe for pushing the container image to some container registry. For all of these kind of things, some folks from the open source community may have already provided this and providing it back and giving it back to the community, and we can make use of this. So on the next slide, we will see how a successful run of a GitHub action can be shown. So this is a real executed GitHub action from an open source project that I'm involved in, and the purpose of this specific action is mainly to build the CLI for different operating systems. So we can see on the very right-hand side here that the CLI is basically generated for different operating system, but it's not only the CLI. So first it does some unit tests, but it also builds some Helm charts. That's the whole Docker building. So a lot of things are going to happen, and everything is done within GitHub. So you can do this automated on a pull request as it's done here. So for each pull request, everything is tested and built, and you can use this as a check. So if the build is not successful, this pull request cannot even be merged into main or master. So a lot of things that you can see here are part of the whole CI/CD pipeline. On the next slide, we will see how does it look like. And as I said in the beginning, it's basically YAML. It's a very declarative way, but you can make use of a lot of different variables. You can make use also, you can see it here in line 141, for example, you can make use of other actions. You can directly say, I want to make use of an action in a specific version. And this action will then be executed at this point in time. You can also have a look at this very specific action, because all the actions are also these are basically GitHub repositories, and you can have a look what is actually executed there. So it's very transparent, it's very reusable. And what we've seen earlier, it's not on the previous slide. We could see a lot of things going to happen. So this file is for sure longer. I just wanted to show a little bit here. So this is how you can write and how you can make use of GitHub Actions in the context of CI/CD. But it's not only CI/CD, and Gerwald has prepared a little bit of a demo how you can also use it in a bigger context. We can't hear the audio yet. I think there should be audio. Gerwald, can you hear me? The audio is not playing on our end. Okay, so I will just briefly speak to this. So the main idea of this is if some user, someone that takes a look at your GitHub repository is starring your GitHub repository, it will act upon this specific action. So this GitHub action will listen for the star to a specific GitHub action, and it will then execute this. We will listen for starring. So I'm. Gerwald, we couldn't hear the video. So I was just talking to the video and trying to explain what's going to happen.
Yeah, so that's fine. Yeah, sorry for that. It seems we have some problems in our setup with the two speakers being remote. Yeah, so that's something we haven't tested out before. You know, I think let's continue with the video here and talk through it. So the idea here was to show you that we are not only able to address CI/CD with GitHub Actions, but also can react on many other events in the GitHub system. And the demo is about to demonstrate that we are listening here, or the trigger is here, the star rating in a repository. The star rating kicks off an action, and that action adds a specific comment here to our README file by taking the user context and saying the specific user has given you a star rating, and adds that to the README file. So within GitHub, there is the possibility to base an action not only on a pull request or a commit trigger, but on an issue, a new issue comment, a user which is for the first time contributing to a repository, so that you can send him a welcome mail, for example, or also sharing the coding guidelines with that user. So there are a lot of possibilities to use this as a workflow tool and not only as a CI/CD tool. Good. With that, I think I hand over back to Jürgen, and he will continue with the next feature.
Cool. Thank you. So we already heard a little bit of GitHub Copilot also in the keynote today. We also want to highlight this because it's a brand new feature. It's like as we've seen with Codespaces that Gerwald presented, and the power of Copilot is that it's basically your AI-powered pair programming buddy. So you have it as a small plugin in your VS Code, for example, or other IDE, whatever you might be using. I tried it with VS Code, and it will suggest some code snippets, even whole functions, depending on the context, what you're writing, and it feels very natural. So it's basically code completion, but not only for one basically keyword or one function, but it's code completion for comments, for either writing complete functions, and it feels very natural. You can make use of it, but you can just kind of also, if you want to, you can just ignore it. It's basically just providing suggestions for you and can auto-complete what this AI kind of suggests and things that you want to do. It's currently in technical preview. It's open to sign up, And on the next slide, we will also see how it will run. So I've just provided a very small demo. It's also recorded, but this time I will just speak to it. And I just tried a couple of things. So if we want to start it here, we will just see, I was basically in my Go program, I was just typing in a couple of things like validating email. And as you see, it was auto-completing this. I was just hitting tab and it was completely auto-completing this function. I was then trying to a little bit with other wording, validate correct email instead of validate email. And it was giving me other suggestions. You can also do just writing a comment. It will suggest which comment you might want to write. I called it to uppercase, and it was already thinking, yeah, you could do it with a string. So the input would be a string, the output would be a string, and it would basically do the correct and meaningful way of providing this function. But you can also do a little bit more complex ways. So I was thinking, what is one thing that everyone has to do during studies is basically implementing quicksort. So with quicksort, it will give you also the complete implementation. One option for the complete implementation. You can see like rand is not yet imported, so I would like to import it then afterwards. So there are a lot of different things that this can do. I just tried it with a couple of different things. It depends very much on the context that you are writing it, and the whole suggestions, they are coming from the open source community. So it's basically looking for different implementations for these kind of functions that you might want to do, or like wordings for different comments that you write, and scanning the public available repositories on GitHub. And from there, all these suggestions are coming. So it's basically providing or giving you back the whole power of this open source community. And it sits right next to yours. It's like with you on your in your computer, and it provides you all these kind of suggestions. So if you think this is a great thing, give it a try. It's already in technical preview. You can sign up for this. And it's really fun to use it, as it can really speed up also your developer productivity, as it will already give you some suggestions and you could just change them. So really cool thing. And let's move on to the next. Not sure if it's my turn or, yeah, no, Gerwald, you will take it, right?
Yeah, so then I take that slide here. The next thing we want to show is GitHub Pages. And GitHub Pages is building functionality to GitHub to create a website regarding your project, having some static content posted on a web hosting environment, which either can be done or accessed by custom domains or by built-in functionality in GitHub. GitHub also provides some pre-configured themes and templates based on an open source project you can use to create your GitHub pages. And there are also some specific little tips and tricks regarding GitHub pages where Jürgen will show you the next feature here.
Sorry, I was muted. So there was the possibility to have like a public available web page. There was the previous demo. What you can also have is like a personal profile page. When you think on your GitHub profile, github.com/ for me it will be Etzlstorfer. Then when you go there, you can also add some more information to your profile, so that it's not only listing all your public repositories and maybe listing a little bit of stats, but you can really make it personal and tell a little bit about yourself, maybe also inform people which project you are involved in, what is like your main programming language, if you like to have like others contributing to your projects. These kind of things you can easily put in there. And how you do it, you just use a README. And the README has to be in a very specific repository, and you call this repository the same as your username. So for me, it would be Etzlstorfer. If you have another name, it's just your name, And exactly, yeah, you will put it there, and in this repository, you will put one file. It's called the readme.md. You will put it there, and then on your public available GitHub profile, it's basically rendering this README, as you can see here. So the README is shown here. I've just provided a little bit of information about myself, and then this is just a screenshot, but then basically everything else, the normal GitHub view would follow. You could also use this for organizations. So for example, if you are driving an open source project and you have an organization there, you could also use it. Gerwald, if you can maybe go back one slide, they also provided like where you can put it if you have an organization. It's a little bit different. So you have an organization name, that's maybe the name of your, let's say, GitHub your open source project, and then you will put it in the .github/profile/readme. The reason for this is because on the organizational level, you can also include more like the default template for issues, or some like the default code of conduct you would have for the whole organization. So you can use more, but this is just one very cool way to also provide more information, not only on the personal level, but also on the organizational level. Okay, yeah, we can jump on to the next one. Yes, we've done this. Is there? Yeah, GitHub Gists. One small but very usable feature, useful feature. It's an instant way to create like code snippets, notes, also like even functions. So if you go to gist.github.com, it will not open up a repository. It will just give you a text box. You can put in whatever you want to put in there, give it a name, and save it. So with this, you have a very easy way to have like code snippets that you might want to use often, or just you want to share, you want to take notes. It's a very easy and convenient way to do this. You could also, of course, organize everything in a repository, but this is just like the fast track to also do this. What else do we have? Yes, so in the beginning and also in the chat and in the booth, we already kind of gave you the sneak peek that there will be a little bit of a game here. So you can win something. You can win, we have 2 backpacks reserved for this session, and you can win this by answering this question, but not here in the chat, but in the chat of the Microsoft booth. The question is, how fast is GitHub's own developer image starting in GitHub Codespaces? So the answer to this is available in the interweb. So you can find it there. Gerwald mentioned what it is. So we all know now what Codespaces is, but it's also heavily used internally at GitHub. And you will find more information about the size of this image and also how fast it will start. So find this information and put it into the chat of the Microsoft booth, and the first 2 correct answers will win. Terms and conditions applied. It can also be found in the Microsoft booth, and we will be there afterwards. So I will be then joining the Microsoft booth and will announce the winners there. Before I hand back to Gerwald, I will just answer one question from the chat. Is like if there is any way to speed up the registration for progress for the GitHub Copilot feature. Unfortunately, there is not. So it's right now in technical preview. If you sign up there is a waiting list, and it will basically every now and then they will open up more and more people to this feature. So just sign up there and you will get the invite eventually.
Yeah. So, but the experience for Copilot sign up was quite good in the past weeks. So I hope you're getting added soon. Should be just a moment away. Yeah. For the remainder session, we have put together some additional content in terms of where you can find more information, where you can learn more about the features which we also presented today. And the first thing I want to share with you here is the GitHub Learning Lab. The GitHub Learning Lab is an interactive online training platform which you can access for free. And Within the GitHub Learning Labs, you have online trainings which consist of some information that is provided, but also hands-on labs. And these hands-on labs are designed in a very cool way because you have a bot in the background validating what you have done in the repository during your hands-on sessions, and validating the input from your side. So saying, hey, cool stuff, yeah, great job, you did it the right way, or here are some hints, yeah, how you can improve, and try again. And then the bot is unlocking additional content if you are successfully completed your exercise or your hands-on lab. Why I'm talking so much about this bot functionality or this rating functionality, because that's something we also provide in the area of our offers for educational institutions from GitHub. And there is a lot which we do for students of all kinds in GitHub. So first of all, there is an own landing page where you can get more information about what we are going to provide. There is a special program for students, which is categorized being greater than 13 years, so higher education or university, where you get a bunch of free tools and access, or a whole bag of developer tools to explore your first encoding steps. There is also a special program for teachers, so that we provide that kind of bot and rating functionality to somebody being in the education area, and running some classes themselves, so you can fully automate all the exercises you give out to your class by also using that bot to rate your exercises and even grade the exercises by saying, hey, that's a very efficient way how you solved that challenge, or maybe there is some optimization which can be done to the code. So we provide that sort of functionality to the education area. Of course, there is also a roadmap for GitHub, and you can access that roadmap also publicly. If you are not familiar with all the abbreviations that might be used in that context, just to give you some introduction here. So we provide GitHub, as you know it, as a cloud-based SaaS application, but we also do provide special versions for enterprise customers, so for companies, where we address the specific needs of companies. For example, providing single sign-on with their company credentials from Active Directory or other providers. And within GitHub Enterprise, we provide a cloud version, a SaaS version of GitHub, but there is also a server version available. So you can also have a local installation with GitHub Enterprise Server. And we currently do invest a lot of our development work into the area of security, and provide with GitHub Advanced Security some security functionality which is required, especially in an enterprise context. Yeah, with that, we hope that we gave you a good overview about some of the features in GitHub, also some of the newer features which are available in GitHub. Would like to thank you for the participation in our session. Don't forget to get to our virtual booth with the chance to win already. We had this chance in the keynote, and providing that also in our session right here. And I think we still have some time to open up for questions. So I'm ask our moderators if there are any questions we can address right away. Otherwise, we would also be available in the booth for you during the day.
That's great. Maybe some things, thanks Gerwald, first of all, and some things that I just want to highlight. So there is way more that we could not cover in this. So we have just seen it briefly in the roadmap slide that Gerwald also showed. There is like a whole project organization of functionality from GitHub that you can also use, and it's heavily used in large open source projects. But I think we've covered a lot, ranging from like how to create this profile, personal and static web pages, education, learning, Codespaces. So don't forget the question also around Codespaces. Answer this in the booth, and also things like actions. So give it a try. GitHub.com is your go-to place. We will be available in the booth. Just shoot us the questions there. And yeah, I think see you there. And thanks everyone for joining this session.